as much as I can before my download finishes.
Okay.
Sunday was warm and sunny, just how I always fantasized it would be when I finally went through with it. I started walking to the dumpster again. I think about 2 p.m., and I was really excited and nervous. I felt butterflies in my tummy, just anticipating what I was about to do. The dumpster is in the alley behind a restaurant near my house. It gets emptied on Tuesday, so by Sunday it's pretty stinky, and there are flies buzzing around, which means there are things rotting inside that are just perfect for me. A few times in the past I climbed in... What did you say?
Oh no.
A few times in the past I climbed into the dumpster and masturbated. Nothing too intense. Most I'd ever done was take off my pants and hump against the dirty garbage bags.
God.
And one time I lay there with my legs spread, watching the flies land on me.
No.
So anyway, I walked down the alley to the dumpster, and as usual I made sure nobody was around, just to be extra careful. You have to go behind a tall wooden fence to even see the dumpster. And the restaurant is closed on Sunday anyway, so I knew I wouldn't be noticed. By this time, there's no way I want to be disturbed. I climbed up and over the side, and onto my hands and knees into a mass of plastic garbage bags, and other miscellaneous rubbish. The bags felt warm from the sun. The smell there was extremely... What did you say?
I'm just laughing.
It was extremely foul, much worse than usual, and I knew it was because of my I knew it was because of my rotting meat. What the fuck? Wait, hold on.
Excuse
I
me?
sat and tried to get myself to relax it for a few minutes. There was no reason to hurry. When I was ready, I calmly took off my sandals, my jeans, and my panties. Both pairs. I was wearing 2 pairs of tight panties with a bunch of my panty liners in from the crotch,
Is this
which
not a
keeps anything
dude?
in my vagina from...
Oh.
Hey!
I
Can
thought it
you
was-
please shut up? I'm
I
trying
thought it
to
was a
read.
dude the whole time, man.
Both pairs. I was wearing 2 pairs of tight panties with a bunch of my panty liners in the crotch, which keeps anything in my vagina from coming out when I move around. But I was going all the way this time, so I went ahead and got completely naked. That was a weird feeling, being totally nude inside the dumpster. It seemed very erotic to me. The sun felt warm on my skin, especially my boobs, which pretty much never see the sun. Oh, here we go. I took a pair of rubber kitchen gloves out of my pants pocket and put them on. There was no way I could bring myself to actually touch a maggot with my bare hands. Laying on my back against the side of the dumpster, I fingered my pussy. I was really wet already. I knew I would be. The sensation of the rubber glove against my clit felt unusual. I just kind of liked it. I did that for a little while, just thinking about what I was going to do. While standing at the smaller garbage bag in the far corner of the dumpster, while staring at the smaller garbage bag in the far corner of the dumpster where I had left it yesterday, I still felt butterflies in my tummy. I kept thinking to myself that I can't wimp out and I had to go through with this. I wished for a moment that someone else was there to force me to do it, but decided that it was somehow much more sick and depraved to do it myself willingly. And I thought, yeah, that's me. That's what I deserve. I deserve this. And so I knew it was time to do it.
Was that it?
No. Not even a good part yet.
I was about to say.
I got back on my hands and knees and crawled into the other side of the dumpster. I sat down next to my garbage bag, gently picked it up and placed it in front of me. The terrible smell was already stronger. Carefully I tore the bag open, and there had to be thousands of maggots. Kind of beige yellow with little black spots on them, all wreathing in a large mass. I couldn't even see the rotting meat underneath them. Dozens more maggots clung to the inside of the plastic bag, which was coated in a thick light brown slime. It was such a repulsive sight, I thought I was going to throw up right there, but I didn't. I took a few minutes and got control of myself, fingering my clit while staring at the maggots, trying to work up the courage to continue.
Oh.
I scooped up some of the slime with my gloved finger and brought it to my nose. I knew it was from reading. I knew what it was from the reading I'd done before. It was digestive juices from the maggots, full of bacteria, and it smelled just horrible. I thought to myself, that's what I'm going to smell like. That's the stench that's going to come from my vagina. I want that. I thought, spreading my legs wide apart. I dragged my slimy finger between my pussy lips. My clit felt like a hard little pebble beneath the slime. Oh, my download's good. Thank God. My download's. Jesus Christ. I thought I was gonna have to keep reading that.
You're finished.
You want me to finish?
Yeah, finish.
Oh my fucking God, it's even longer. Fucking asshole.
Oh, it can't be that much longer.
You'll see. I didn't want to come right then, though I was still right on the edge of gagging too. But I knew there was no turning back now, so I let my fingers lightly touch the top of the maggot mass. The maggots felt like nothing I'd have experienced before. They seemed to have such energy, totally different from picking up an earthworm or something. I had felt the solid... Wait, hold on. It seemed to have such an energy, totally different from picking up an earthworm or something, and they felt so alive. I was fascinated and nauseated at the same time. Sinking my fingers into the mass, I felt the solid meat beneath, gently breaking it apart. I could see that the meat had turned gray except for the very center, which was still pink, and the maggots had penetrated into it, but not too deeply yet. There was still plenty of food for my filthy little babies.
What?
I broke off a small chunk of meat that was covered on one side with maggots and held it for a moment, while I fought back another urge to vomit. It was finally time, I thought. I leaned forward and, holding my pussy lips apart with one hand, I gritted my teeth and pushed the maggot-covered chunk of meat into my vagina. And then, totally without expecting it, I had an orgasm. A quick, a sharp one that made me want more.
What the fuck, dude?
And more was coming. I broke off another small chunk of meat, along with another part of the maggot mass, and pushed it inside me. This one had more maggots on it, and I stopped for a moment to see if I could feel them inside me. I wasn't sure I could. It didn't matter. I wanted them all. I needed to take them all inside me. With that thought, I went sort of wild. I started pushing bigger chunks of meat and maggots, and even handfuls of just maggots into me, over and over. I was practically hyperventilating too. I wasn't thinking about all the noise I must have been making, but now I could definitely feel the maggots squirming inside of my vagina. Just the idea of it made me come again. Finally, once I had crammed all of the rotten meat and the maggots I could inside me, I felt so filthy, so disgusting, like I turned myself into some low, depraved sort of beast. And it made me so incredibly hot, together with the constant movement of the maggots inside of me. But it was time to go. Holding a hand over my crotch, I slowly crawled back to my clothes and managed to get dressed without anything coming out. I put the gloves back into my pocket and climbed out of the dumpster. Right then I could hold back the revulsion of what I had done no longer. Holding myself against the side of the dumpster, I threw up. Ever vomited while you were horny? It's weird. Have you ever vomited while you were horny? No?
I can't say I have.
It's weird.
What the hell?
Walking
bro?
home down the alley, I felt like I was in a daze. I kept asking myself how I could have done this to myself. But then asking why I'd waited so long. I had to walk slowly to make sure nothing got squeezed out of my vagina, but also to keep from coming again. I felt myself amazed at the whole thing, that I had stuffed the most intimate part of myself with these things that were too disgusting to even touch without gloves, and that I was totally getting off on it. Once I was home, oh, here we go. Once I was home, I locked myself in the bedroom and took off my clothes, except for my double panties, and got into bed. I closed my eyes and just let myself feel the maggots squirming inside me. For a while I tried to watch TV, but I couldn't really pay attention to it. The maggots were too wonderfully distracting. I skipped dinner later on. When I really had to pee, I did it by taking down my panties and holding my hand over my crotch, wearing rubber gloves, of course. The next morning, I called off work after being awake most of the night. I mainly stayed naked in bed all day masturbating, barely getting up for anything. I wanted to do nothing but let my nauseating little babies grow inside my pussy. Pretty early though, I realized the smell was getting really horrible. I opened the window and I also wet a bath towel and stuffed it under my bedroom door. I didn't want my parents to get suspicious. A little later on, I had realized that I didn't need the panties to hold the maggots and the meat inside. The mass pretty much stayed in place as long as I laid kind of still. I thought, hey, I guess that means I'm infested, which made me come again. I was always right on the edge of orgasm, and it didn't take much to go over the edge. I also noticed that the maggots seemed to be more active if I kept my legs apart, and realized that they probably needed to breathe. So that's how I stayed a lot of the time. I did get up and read my email and post an update on my webpage, but I couldn't seem to think clearly enough to write much. Then I had to pee again, but I didn't want to get up, so I peed the bed. It made me come. I just wanted to keep feeling the maggots moving, and they keep, that's a fucking weird sentence. I just wanted to keep the feeling the maggots moving, and they were. That's a sentence. That's actually a cut-off sentence. They seemed even stronger in anything. I was totally in heaven with it. I didn't eat at all either. I heard my parents come home from work. During the evening, my mom said hello through the door and wondered why I was staying in my room like a hermit. I said I was reading a novel all the way through at once, which I actually do sometimes. She left me alone, and I hope she didn't smell anything. I surfed the web for a while that night and looked at a porn. I came a few more times, and I decided to go ahead and... oh, fuck. I decided to go ahead and take a shit in my bed right there where I was. That made me more turned on, and I ended up... oh, fucking Christ.
What? What happened?
My appetite. I'm trying to eat this popsicle. Where I was. That made me more turned on, and I ended up smearing some of my shit over my thighs and my pussy and coming again. I noticed that the maggots started coming out a bit. Maybe they liked the shit. A couple times, one would creep up on my belly. I just flick it back down between my legs. I was getting tired at that point. It was really time to sleep, and my vagina was throbbing and kind of sore from all the attention. But I was most worried about making sure my maggots could breathe while I was sleeping.
Oh god.
Somehow I managed to find the energy to place a chair on either side of my bed and use the sheets to tie my ankles to them, that I would keep my legs apart during the night. I pulled the blankets over myself and dozed off, laying in my piss and shit. For the most part, I slept through the night, but I kept waking up sweating with my vagina throbbing worse. I knew I was getting a bad infection from this, but I didn't care. I was not thinking right. I could also feel maggots crawling all over me. I guess I decided that I'd play with my clit until I came again. I don't know if I realized at the time that I wasn't wearing the rubber gloves anymore. I'd fall. Oh, fuck. Sorry, my popsicle. It just dripped. I'd fall back to sleep and wake up again later with the little phrases running through my head. Other girls have babies, but I give birth to decay and filth.
Oh
I'd
my
keep
God.
thinking that to myself, or that I'd say I'm probably ruining my womb and I don't care. I want to be ruined. I know that I must have been hallucinating from the infection. I was hoping the maggots had given up on the rotten meat and were eating my vagina instead. My fingertips, where fingers were buried inside my vagina with the fingertips against the part of the meat. Whenever I pressed on it, all the maggots would squirm faster and I'd climax again.
Oh.
I could do it over and over and keep coming. Finally, it was Tuesday morning and sunlight made me wake me up. I knew I was really sick at that point. I felt weak and dizzy. I knew I had a fever and now my whole lower body was sore and throbbing. Despite that all, I was horny and was still right on the edge of coming. And then for some reason, all I wanted to do was see my maggots. I pulled the blanket aside and saw that I really did have maggots crawling all over my body. I was so whacked out and I loved it. But I also saw that I had a rash spreading over my tummy and my thighs. And I was soaked with sweat. And then suddenly I needed to see what it looked like between my legs. I sat up a little, picked up a hand mirror I have on my table right next to me and held it between my thighs. My pussy was totally gaped wide open.
Oh,
I'd never seen it like that before. It reminded me of a mouth in a sick, gagging expression. My inner lips were swollen and dark purple, almost black, while my outer lips were cherry red and were losing a layer of dead skin like a sunburn. A stream of the light brown slime was oozing from inside of my vagina and down my butt crack into the shitty mattress. Although I could still feel a large mass of maggots and rotten meat inside me, there were maggots everywhere between my legs, hundreds of them. And then I saw my fingers on my pussy. They plunged deep inside my vagina and dragged out a wad of slime and maggots, which I pressed hard against my clit. I remember having a huge orgasm right then, and I must have passed out. I think I was sobbing too, but I'm not sure. That's all I remember until I woke up in the hospital. I'll write about that later.
Oh my
Like that note.
God, what the hell, bro?
I need
Finn.
another popsicle after that shit. I'm gonna be right back.
Finn. What the hell?